My best friend planned a joint birthday party with me but turned it into her engagement announcement and expected me to pay for the venue and decorations. I'm 28F and my best friend Keely is also 28F. We've been close since high school, and our birthdays are only 3 days apart. Hers is May 12th and mine is May 15th. For the past few years, we've done joint birthday celebrations because it's easier and more fun to have one bigger party instead of two smaller ones. We usually split the costs down the middle and invite our combined friend groups. It's always worked out fine. This year, Keely texted me in early March saying she wanted to do something extra special for our birthdays since we're both turning 28 and it's our last year before 30 starts looming. I thought that was a little dramatic, but I was into it. She said she'd been looking at venues and found this really nice event space downtown that could fit about 80 people. She sent me pictures and it looked beautiful. String lights, exposed brick, a private bar area, the whole thing. I asked how much it would cost and she said the venue rental was $1,200 plus we'd need to cover decorations, a bartender, and some food. She estimated it would be around $2,500 total if we kept it simple. I did the math in my head and realized my half would be $1,250, which was way more than I'd ever spent on a birthday party. But she seemed so excited that I didn't want to be the one to shut it down. I told her it was more than I usually spend, but if we were really doing something special, I could make it work. She said, "Perfect. I'll book it and we can figure out all the details later." I assumed we'd sit down together and plan everything, but she just went ahead and put down the deposit. Over the next few weeks, Keely kept sending me ideas for decorations. She wanted a specific color scheme, rose gold and white, which I thought was pretty but also very her and not really me. I mentioned maybe adding some other colors to make it feel more balanced and she said, "Trust me, it's going to look amazing. Just let me handle the aesthetic." I was fine with that because honestly, planning parties stresses me out and Keely's always been good at that kind of thing. She's very detail-oriented and has a good eye for design, so I just let her take the lead and figured I'd help with whatever she needed. In mid-April, about a month before the party, Keely asked me to meet her for lunch. When I got there, she had this huge binder full of printouts and inspiration photos. She walked me through everything she'd planned, the decorations, the food menu, the timeline for the night, even a playlist. It all looked gorgeous, but it also looked really elaborate. I asked her how much everything was going to cost and she said she'd been keeping a running total and we were at about $3,600. My stomach dropped. That was way more than the original estimate. I said, "Wait, I thought we said $2,500 max." And she waved her hand and said, "I know, but I found some upgrades that were totally worth it. Don't worry, it's going to be incredible." I told her I couldn't afford $1,800 for a birthday party. That was almost a month's rent for me. She looked annoyed and said, "It's not just a birthday party, it's a milestone. We're celebrating a whole year of life. You can't put a price on that." I said I literally could put a price on it and my price was around $1,250 like we'd originally agreed. She sighed and said, "Fine, I'll see if I can cut some stuff, but I'm not compromising on the important things." I asked what the important things were and she rattled off the centerpieces, the dessert table, and the custom cocktail napkins with our names on them. I didn't even know we were getting custom napkins. I left that lunch feeling uneasy but I didn't push back harder because Keely seemed so invested. I figured she'd trim the budget like she said and it would be fine. 2 weeks before the party, Keely sent me a Venmo request for $1,900. I stared at it for a full minute. That was $650 more than I'd even agreed to with the inflated budget. I texted her immediately asking why it was so much and she said she'd had to add a few last-minute things but it was all necessary upgrades. I called her and said I couldn't pay that much. She said, "Are you serious right now? The party is in 2 weeks. Everything's already ordered. What do you want me to do?" I said I wanted her to stick to the budget we'd agreed on. She said the budget changed because she wanted it to be perfect and I was being cheap. That stung. I'm not cheap. I'm just not in a financial position to drop close to $2,000 on a party. I told her the most I could contribute was $1,250 and she'd have to figure out the rest. She said, "So you're just going to let me cover the difference because you can't be bothered to invest in our friendship?" I was so mad I almost hung up. I told her that wasn't fair and she knew it. She said, "Fine, whatever, I'll deal with it," and hung up on me. I sent her $1,250 via Venmo with a note that said, "This is what we originally agreed on. I can't do more than this." She didn't respond. The week leading up to the party was tense. Keely barely texted me except to send logistical info like what time to show up and where to park. I tried calling her twice to talk things out and she didn't answer. I thought maybe we'd clear the air at the party and things would go back to normal. The night of the party, I showed up at the venue about an hour early like Keely had asked. She was already there directing a team of people setting up decorations. The place looked stunning. I'll give her that. Rose gold balloons everywhere, beautiful floral arrangements on every table, a dessert table that looked like it belonged at a wedding, custom napkins with our initials in gold script. I walked over to help and she barely acknowledged me. She just handed me a box of party favors and told me to put one at each seat. I did what she asked and tried to make small talk, but she was clearly still upset. Guests started arriving around 7 p.m. and the party kicked off. Everyone was complimenting the decorations and the setup. A few people made comments like, "Wow, this looks like a wedding," or "This is so fancy for a birthday," and I just laughed it off. I thought maybe Keely had just gone overboard trying to make it special. A bunch of people came up to me and said things like, "You guys went all out," and I just smiled and said, "Yeah, Keely did an amazing job," because she really had, even if the budget fight had been awful. Around 8:30 p.m., Keely clinked a glass to get everyone's attention. I thought she was going to do a toast or maybe a joint birthday speech, but instead she said, "Thank you all so much for coming to celebrate with us tonight, but I have some exciting news I want to share." My stomach dropped. I had no idea what she was about to say. She reached into her purse and pulled out her hand with a ring on it, a big, sparkly engagement ring. She said, "Evan proposed a few weeks ago and I wanted to share this moment with all of you. We're getting married." The room erupted in cheers and applause. Everyone rushed over to congratulate her and look at the ring. I just stood there in shock. She'd turned our joint birthday party into her engagement announcement. I felt sick. This whole thing suddenly made sense. The rose gold and white color scheme, the elaborate decorations, the dessert table that looked like it belonged at a wedding, the fancy setup. She hadn't been planning a birthday party. She'd been planning an engagement party and just slapped my name on it so I'd help pay for it. I waited until the crowd around her died down and then I pulled her aside. I said, "Did you plan this? Was this whole party actually for your engagement?" She looked at me like I was being ridiculous and said, "No, it's still our birthday party. I just thought it would be fun to announce the engagement here since everyone we love was already in one place." I said, "Keely, you made me pay $1,250 for what is essentially your engagement party." She said, "That's not true. It's a dual-purpose event. You're being really selfish right now. Can't you just be happy for me?" I told her I would be happy for her if she hadn't deceived me into funding her engagement celebration. She said I was making everything about me and ruining her special moment. I said she'd already ruined our birthday by turning it into something else entirely. She told me I needed to leave if I was going to have that attitude. I said fine and I left. I didn't even say goodbye to anyone. I just grabbed my coat and walked out. The next day, my phone was blowing up. Keely had apparently told everyone that I'd gotten jealous of her engagement and caused a scene at the party. Multiple people texted me asking what happened and saying they couldn't believe I'd reacted that way. A few of them said I should apologize. I tried to explain my side to a couple of mutual friends. One of them, Brooke, said she understood why I was upset but that I should have waited until after the party to confront Keely. Another friend, Aisha, said she thought it was weird that Keely announced her engagement at our birthday party but that I probably overreacted by leaving. No one seemed to understand that the issue wasn't the engagement itself. It was the fact that Keely had essentially tricked me into paying for her engagement party. A few days later, Keely texted me saying, "I can't believe you're still mad about this. It was supposed to be a beautiful night and you ruined it. I think we need some space." I didn't respond. It's been 3 weeks now and we haven't spoken. Mutual friends keep trying to get us to talk it out but I don't even know what I'd say. I feel betrayed and used, and she seems to think I'm the one who did something wrong. My sister thinks I should let it go because losing a friendship over a party isn't worth it. My roommate thinks Keely was completely out of line and I should demand my money back. I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't necessarily want my money back. I just want Keely to acknowledge what she did and apologize. But based on everything she said, I don't think that's going to happen. She genuinely seems to believe she did nothing wrong. So, am I overreacting? Should I have just been happy for her and let it go? Or was I right to be upset? Update, 5 weeks later. I wasn't sure if I'd update this, but things have gotten messy enough that I feel like I need to. About a week after my original post, Keely's fiancé Evan reached out to me. I'd met him a few times but we'd never really talked one-on-one. He sent me a text saying, "Hey, can we grab coffee? I want to talk about what happened at the party." I was hesitant because I didn't know whose side he was on, but I was also curious, so I agreed. We met at a coffee shop near my work and he seemed uncomfortable from the start. He said, "Look, I don't want to get in the middle of your friendship with Keely, but I feel like there's been a misunderstanding." I asked what he meant and he said, "Keely told me you were totally on board with the engagement announcement. She said you two had talked about it and you thought it was a great idea." My jaw actually dropped. I said, "That's not true. I had no idea she was planning to announce it. She didn't say a word to me." Evan looked confused and said, "Are you sure? Because she made it sound like you guys had planned the whole thing together." I pulled out my phone and showed him the text thread between me and Keely leading up to the party. There was nothing about an engagement announcement. He read through it and his face changed. He said, "This doesn't match what she told me at all." He looked genuinely upset. He said when he'd proposed a few weeks before the party, Keely had immediately started talking about how she wanted to announce it at her party coming up. He'd asked if it was okay to do it at a joint birthday event and she'd told him it was fine because I was cool with it and we'd planned it together. He said she'd even told him she'd been planning the party with the engagement in mind because she knew the proposal was coming soon. He said, I wouldn't have gone along with it if I'd known you didn't know. That's really messed up. I appreciated him saying that, but I also felt even worse knowing Keely had lied to him too. Before we left, Evan said he was going to talk to Keely about it. I told him I didn't want to cause problems in their relationship and he said, if there are problems, it's because she lied, not because you told the truth. 2 days later, Keely called me. She was crying and said, I can't believe you went behind my back and turned Evan against me. I said I didn't go behind her back. He reached out to me, and I just told him the truth. She said, you're trying to ruin my engagement because you're jealous. I was so tired of that accusation. I said, Keely, I'm not jealous. I'm hurt that you used me to pay for your engagement party and then lied to your fiancé about it. She said, I didn't lie. I just didn't think you'd mind. We always share everything. I said sharing expenses for a joint party is different from making me fund your personal celebration without telling me. She said I was being dramatic and that she'd already paid back the difference anyway, so what was the problem? I said, you paid back the difference, and she said, well, no, but I was planning to eventually, which made no sense. I told her if she was planning to pay me back then she must have known what she did was wrong. She didn't have an answer for that. She just said, I thought you'd be happy for me. I thought this was something we could celebrate together, but you've made it all about money. I said it wasn't about the money, it was about the dishonesty. She said she had to go and hung up. A few days after that, Brooke called me. She said, okay, I talked to Keely and I think I understand your side better now. Apparently Keely had admitted to a few of our friends that she'd planned the engagement announcement without telling me, but she was framing it as a spur-of-the-moment decision that she thought I'd be excited about. Brooke said, she's not telling people that she basically designed the whole party around the engagement. I asked how she knew that and Brooke said, because I helped her pick out some of the decorations a few weeks before the party, and she kept talking about how it needed to look engagement appropriate. I didn't think she'd actually go through with using your money for it though. I thought she was just being extra about the birthday thing. Brooke apologized for not believing me initially and said she thought Keely owed me an apology and probably some money. I told her I wasn't holding my breath. About 2 weeks ago, things escalated. Keely posted a long Facebook status about fake friends and how some people can't handle other people's happiness. She didn't name me directly, but it was very clearly about me. She talked about how she'd tried to include someone in her joy and they'd thrown it back in her face. A bunch of people commented with supportive messages. A few mutual friends who didn't know the full story commented things like, you deserve better and real friends celebrate with you. It made me feel awful. Aisha texted me and said, I know that post is about you, and I think you should respond and tell your side. I didn't want to air everything out on Facebook, so I didn't, but the post stayed up and more people kept commenting. Then Evan commented. His comment said, I think there's more to this story than what's being said here. People should get the full context before judging. Keely deleted his comment within an hour and then posted another status saying, it's sad when even the people closest to you don't support you. I heard from Brooke that Keely and Evan had a huge fight about it. Apparently he told her she needed to take accountability for lying to both of us, and she accused him of taking my side over hers. Brooke said Evan told Keely he wasn't taking sides. He just didn't like being lied to. I felt terrible that their relationship was suffering because of this. I texted Evan and said I was sorry for causing problems. He said, you didn't cause anything. Keely's choices did, but thanks for checking in. Last week, Keely sent me a long email. It wasn't an apology. It was more of a manifesto about how our friendship had been one-sided for years and how I'd never been truly supportive of her. She brought up random things from years ago, like how I didn't go to her college graduation party, I had COVID, and how I didn't offer to help plan her mom's birthday last year. I didn't know she needed help. She said, you've always been quietly resentful of me, and this party situation just gave you an excuse to finally show it. She ended the email by saying she thought it was best if we didn't talk anymore and that she'd be removing me from her wedding planning, which I didn't even know I was part of. I read that email 3 times trying to figure out if I was actually the bad guy in all of this. I talked to my therapist about it and she said it sounded like Keely was rewriting history to make herself feel better about what happened. She said sometimes people can't admit they were wrong, so they convince themselves the other person was always the problem. I didn't respond to the email. What would I even say? A few friends have reached out privately to say they think Keely is handling this badly and they support me, but publicly, everyone's still acting like nothing happened. It's created this weird tension in our friend group where people are being nice to both of us but also clearly uncomfortable. I don't know if Keely and I will ever be friends again. Part of me is sad about that because we have so much history, but another part of me is realizing that maybe the friendship wasn't as solid as I thought it was. I haven't gotten my money back. I don't expect to at this point. I'm just trying to move forward and figure out what my social life looks like without her in it. Final update, 4 months later. This is probably my last update because things have settled into a new normal, though not in a way I expected. About 6 weeks after my last update, Evan reached out again. He asked if we could meet up, and this time he sounded really serious. I agreed and we met at the same coffee shop. He told me he and Keely had broken up. I was shocked. He said it wasn't just because of what happened with the party, but that was part of it. He said after everything came out, he started noticing other times when Keely would bend the truth or manipulate situations to get what she wanted. He said he couldn't marry someone he didn't fully trust. He seemed genuinely sad about it, and I felt bad for him. I told him I was sorry things ended that way, and he said, "I'm not. Better to find out now than after the wedding." He also told me that Keely had admitted to him that she'd planned the engagement announcement weeks in advance and had intentionally kept it from me because she knew I'd object to splitting costs for what was essentially her party. He said when he confronted her about it, she'd tried to justify it by saying I owed her for all the time she'd been there for me over the years. That hit me hard. The idea that she'd been keeping some kind of score in our friendship and felt entitled to trick me because of it made me realize how unhealthy things had gotten. Evan said he wanted to pay me back for my portion of the party out of his own pocket since the whole thing had been misrepresented to both of us. I told him that wasn't necessary, but he insisted. He Venmoed me $1,250 a few days later with a note that said, "This should have never been your burden." I didn't hear anything from Keely for about a month after that. Then out of nowhere, she showed up at my apartment. I didn't let her in. We just talked in the hallway. She looked awful, like she hadn't been sleeping. She said she wanted to apologize. She said, "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I know I messed up." I didn't say anything. I just waited. She said, "I got so caught up in the engagement and wanting everything to be perfect that I lost sight of our friendship. I shouldn't have used you like that." It felt like a real apology at first, but then she said, "I was hoping we could move past this and go back to how things were." That's when I realized she still didn't fully get it. She thought apologizing would just reset everything. I told her I appreciated the apology, but I didn't think we could go back to being close friends. I said what she did broke my trust, and the way she handled it after made it worse. She started crying and said, "So that's it? Years of friendship just gone?" I said it wasn't gone, but it was different now. I told her I needed space and I wasn't ready to just move on like nothing happened. She nodded and said, "I understand," but I could tell she didn't really. Before she left, she said, "For what it's worth, Evan and I aren't together anymore." I said I'd heard, and I was sorry. She said, "Are you though?" in this bitter tone. I didn't respond to that. She left and I haven't seen her since. In the weeks after that, a few things happened. Brooke told me Keely had been reaching out to mutual friends trying to get them to convince me to forgive her. Most people were staying out of it, but a couple of friends told me they gently suggested Keely give me space. I also found out through Aisha that Keely had been struggling financially because she'd put deposits down for wedding vendors that she couldn't get refunded after the engagement ended. Apparently she'd asked her parents for help and they'd told her she needed to figure it out herself. I felt a little bad about that, but those were her own choices coming back to her. About a month ago, I ran into Keely at a mutual friend's housewarming party. It was awkward. We said hi and made small talk for maybe 2 minutes, then spent the rest of the night avoiding each other. A few people noticed and it made the whole vibe weird. I ended up leaving early. After that, I decided I needed to just accept that our friendship was over. We're still in the same social circle, so I'll probably see her at events occasionally, but we're not going to be close again, and honestly, I'm okay with that. I've been spending more time with friends who don't have complicated history with Keely, and it's been refreshing. I don't miss the friendship as much as I thought I would. What I actually miss is the version of us from years ago, not the dynamic we'd fallen into. My roommate asked me recently if I regretted how I handled everything, and I said no. I think I could have handled some moments better, like maybe not leaving the party so abruptly, but overall I don't regret standing up for myself. Evan and I are friendly now, not close, but we'll text occasionally. He's doing better and he thanked me for being honest with him even though it complicated things. He said he's glad he found out who Keely really was before they got married. As for the money, Evan paying me back felt like some kind of closure. It wasn't about the money at that point, but getting it back felt like someone acknowledging that what happened wasn't okay. Keely's been pretty quiet on social media lately. I don't check her pages anymore, but friends have mentioned she's been posting less. I don't know what she's up to and I'm trying not to care. This whole situation taught me that some friendships don't survive when you finally push back, and maybe that's okay. For years I went along with whatever Keely wanted because it was easier than causing conflict, but that wasn't actually friendship. It was just me making myself smaller so she could stay comfortable. I'm in a better place now than I was a few months ago. I have my money back. I know where I stand, and I've let go of trying to make Keely understand. Some people just won't see it, and you have to decide if you're okay with that. And I am.